So what's the secret to truly becoming unstoppable? Fast. Back when I first started my health and fitness journey, I knew I needed to show up not just when I felt like it, but also I knew there might be a secret that would allow me to show up that way anyway. That's when I came across David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, and it transformed how I used my brain to get me to show up in a way that would tap into my why instead of just trying to force myself and pushing myself through it. After I learned what he taught me, I ended up losing 100 pounds, so I decided, why not try these same ideas in my business? And it did the same thing for me. It's one of the key reasons why I was able to quit my full-time job and even have this opportunity to speak to you today, which is why we wanted to bring today's video to you to share these key ideas with you and give you a crash course into what we learned so you too can become unstoppable by tapping into the power you already have built inside of you. If you're ready to tap into that power, which is an infinite reservoir to get you to show up the way that you want to without feeling like you have to force it all the time, well, let's go. It's time to redefine leadership. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. Our channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs like you to achieve the next level of success in business and life. We believe that you can create a massive impact in the world without compromising your personal life or family time to do so.
We're committed to providing you with actionable tips and strategies weekly to make that possible. So if you're ready to become a modern leader and make a lasting difference in the world, consider subscribing. Turn on notifications and dive into our community. We want to thank you for being here because the world needs your leadership now more than ever. Let's go.
Okay, so I'm curious, what was your first impression of David Goggins' approach to mental toughness and pushing past limits?
Yeah, I have to say that when I first got into this book, started to hear about him, I didn't have a good feeling when I got it. It just kind of felt like I was going to degrade myself. I was going to use shame, guilt, humiliation to kind of get myself to show up. Well, what I realized is after reading it and being open to seeing what he's talking about, it's merely just an idea that you can use to transform the way that you're thinking, to use the mental toughness and your strength that you already have inside of you to help you actually show up the way that you truly want to. And when I realized that it wasn't about just pushing through, and if I was willing to lean in and understand what he was describing, that I could transform my life that way too. And after I started to see it from that perspective, that's when things started to change. Now I'm curious, he talks a little bit about what's called the 40% rule. When you think that you're done, you're only at 40% of your potential. I'm curious for you, when it comes to like thinking about that 40% rule, how do you think that can help family-driven entrepreneurs show up not only in their business, but in their family the way they want to?
Okay, so for me, it's really about reframing how I see this. Because, for example, if I feel like I'm doing something and I'm 90% done, that means I'm going to start to take my foot off of the gas. Because for whatever reason, like, let's say I'm running and I know that the finish line is right there. Like, I feel like all of these things start to come up. Like, I'm tired and I'm almost there. I can slow down and I don't really have to speed up. But if I reframe that and I think, well, I'm only 40% done, I still have a ways to go, there might be like this point where I feel inspired that I can keep going. I get kind of like that second wind. So there's a different feel to it when I reframe this to thinking that there's still more to go and I have so much potential. So David emphasizes the importance of developing a callous mind to endure kind of hardships. So can you kind of share an experience where you had to mentally toughen up to achieve a goal?
Yeah, 100%. It always goes back to my physical fitness, because when I was 100 pounds overweight, it was very easy for me to give in to all the things that were kind of happening around me, right? And I was giving power to, I didn't have the time, the energy, all that kind of stuff. And what I didn't realize is there was actually a really great opportunity there. When I was willing to find the why behind why I wanted to lose 100 pounds, how I was going to feel, what it was going to be like on the other end, it got me to do the hard things that I know I needed to do. But what was incredible is like when you start doing those things, you put a check mark in your box of developing confidence in yourself because you're doing the things that you said you were going to do. And so what it did is it actually helped me to develop mental toughness in that area. And when I developed mental toughness, not only did I lose that weight, but I was able to now say, well, now how can I use this same mental toughness in this other area, right? Because it wasn't necessarily just me pushing through and hurting myself and feeling the pain. It was realizing the impact that this was going to make and what was going to be on the other side. And when I was able to do that, it now became ingrained in me. It was like a part of my personality. We talk about this a lot on our channel as the be, do, have method, right? When you become the type of person who can do hard things, it's just now ingrained in you. And anything that you do is hard, you can run through that like filter that you now have because you know it's possible for you.
So there's also a concept that he talks about called the accountability mirror to confront your weaknesses honestly. How can entrepreneurs use this technique to identify and overcome their limitations?
Yeah, I really like this idea that he had. And basically it was taking a look at yourself in the mirror. Sometimes he would even write his goals and things on the mirror, but then having an honest conversation with yourself. Now, one of the things that I initially thought is that he was just going to be mean to himself and beat himself up, right? And there was times that he was a little bit aggressive, probably a little bit more aggressive than I would typically be to myself. But what I realized is that when he was actually talking to himself, he wasn't labeling himself or beating himself up. Instead of him saying like, you're a lazy POS, he would be like, you're acting like this. And so when he did that, he was like, well, I can also act like something else. And so he would use the accountability of him looking in the mirror and going, did I do this? Did I not do it? And instead of labeling himself, he would make it be based off of his behavior, which means you could do something different if you want to. And he was just using this to motivate and to inspire himself. Now, I'd like for you to describe what David Goggins calls the cookie jar. And he has this cookie jar that he puts things into. So can you kind of describe how he used that to actually motivate himself and get himself inspired?
So he would put small victories into that cookie jar. And what he found was that every time he wasn't feeling it, like he would pull that victory from the cookie jar to read it to remind himself that he can do it. And this would help him on those days where he just didn't feel like it. And it was so he could focus on positive things that he's already done. So that can motivate him in the future.
Yeah, I really love that he did that. It's kind of like this thing of remembering who you really are, right? Sometimes, I mean, we talk about this a lot, is like you're on a mountain and you're climbing right now, and this mountain feels like impossible. But what you don't realize is if you turn around, you can see all the mountains that you've climbed before. And this is that reminder of like, you know what, you can do hard things. You've done this. I mean, for David Goggins, sometimes he would go a full 24 hours and do thousands and thousands and thousands of pull-ups just to show himself that he's capable of doing this. So anytime something small would come up, anything that would like challenge him, he would be able to pull out these victories and go, no, I can do this because I did this, right? It's taking the time to like sit back and realize how far you've come, the things you've gone through, the struggles you've been through, the things you've been able to like overcome, and really empower yourself to keep doing it.
So he also uses mental visualization and rehearsal to kind of prepare for challenges. So how can this technique actually be applied by entrepreneurs to prepare for business pitches or really tough decisions?
Yeah, I kind of like that he does this. And this is something that I definitely do as well, is I think about the perfect outcome and what that's going to look like. But I don't just stay there. I also ask myself, like, what are some potential things that could come up that actually could be a problem that I can solve for now in advance? So for example, I might think about like somebody that I'm having a conversation with and I want to make an impact in their life. And maybe they're applying to be a part of our one-on-one program. And so I want to ask them key questions to identify if this is going to be a good fit for them. And then of course, if it is, I'm going to share a little bit about my program. But it could be that maybe they ask me some questions, right? Maybe they have some questions about the price or how long it's going to take or the results or all of these kind of things. And so I try and solve some of the key problems in advance. And how I do that is I visualize what it would look like if I stepped into it and I actually led with confidence, knowing that I'm not going to like force this person to go one way or the other, but the best opportunity I have is to develop and be as confident as I possibly can in that moment, because I really do believe in what I do and what I'm capable of. And when I can rehearse this, when it goes perfectly and nothing comes up, it's good to go. But if there's any like detours and I've gone through even some of these different ideas, I can use those and I can pull them in and actually bring them into the session. Now, one of the things that this reminds me of too, is I used to do this whenever I was working LAPD and we would have like, let's say a promotional interview, is I would think about like, okay, what are some of the questions they're going to ask me that I could prepare for in advance? And what are some things that they could potentially bring up that maybe I don't necessarily want to talk about or I haven't experienced, but how will I be able to tackle them and visualize myself walking through that process, leaning into my confidence and really just crushing the interview. And by doing that, not only did I have like best case scenario in mind, but I also had worst case scenario and what I would do to recover. And I got to tell you, like that helped me out so much because most of the time I wouldn't do that. And when you do that and you prepare in advance for it, I can't tell you the number or the amount of confidence that you have leading into that session and how many times it actually pays off in the end. Now, while reading his book, there was kind of like a really big red flag for me. And it's something that I just want to call out to because I'm sure if he could redo it, he would do it over again differently, as well as like I saw myself struggling with this too. And that is you get so specific into your routine and your discipline and what you're doing that you kind of forget about your family and you're not putting in the action and energy that you need to really show up for them. I really believe you can use a lot of his concepts and think about how does this apply not only to my business and to my career, but also to my family and to my health. Instead of succeeding in one or two areas, ask yourself, how can I excel at it all? So that was one thing that really called out to me is he struggled with those relationships because of the amount of action and energy that he put into this one area in his life. And thinking about that and how you could actually use these powerful strategies in order to be able to excel at it all is really what we're about here. I mean, that's the reason why we have our book club and our inner circle team. So if you don't know what our book club is we have a club that actually reads powerful books like David Goggins' book that are related to business, health, as well as family. And if that's something you're interested in, the book club is currently free. We'll leave you the link in the description in the show notes below, as well as our group of family-driven entrepreneurs called the Inner Circle, where we actually help guide them through a little bit deeper of the things that we've talked about here today, so we can help personalize it for their business and professional goals. But we'd love to hear from you. Based on today's call, what are you committed to implementing and taking action on so that you truly can become unstoppable too? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for what you do out there every single day, and keep leading from the front.